All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming on this day where we have the first snow of the season. I can see the bright smile on your faces when that time comes. Um, so today we're gonna have our Sunday public lecture by my friend who shares the same name as I do, Tiago, but with one less letter.
Not
Uh,
as fancy.
uh, he's gonna bring a topic which is overcoming traumatic experiences. Before we start, our friend Raquel is gonna do our initial reading and our initial prayer.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I will do a reading for the book Happy Life by Divaldo Franco. Listen calmly whenever you are invited to do so. Let the other person complete his thought. Do not jump to certainly incorrect conclusion. Not everyone can express himself quickly or clearly. So listen cheerfully. Ignore misstatements and poor choices of words in order to understand what the other is trying to say. If someone accuses you, search for the root of wrongdoing and get rid of it. Dialogue shall always happen without bitterness, leaving a positive balance. If he clarifies something for you or teaches you something, absorb the lesson. If he is blaming someone, lessen the intensity of the offense with expressions of comfort to the offended party. So let's now close our eyes and elevate our thoughts to our Master Jesus and all the beloved spirits present here today with us. Let's ask them to open our minds and our hearts for the lecture of today, that we may be inspired to better understand Jesus' teachings. Please guide our friend Tiago, that we may be able to pass through everything that he learned through his preparation in order to help us become better humans. Thank you, so be it.
Good morning, everybody. Very glad to be here. It is nice and warm here. You don't believe it's so nice. It's great. I hope you are all keeping warm as well. Today, I'm just looking for my lecture in the computer. Those days is all like this, right? Computer. Okay. Today we're going to talk about something very interesting. Well, at least for me. I just happen to work with this, so talking about that is exciting for me, even though sometimes it's not easy to hear words like trauma, traumatic experiences. But let's try to make sense. Let's try to understand, make meaning of these experiences. And not only that, we know that in this day and age, we talk a lot about that. If you turn on the radio today, especially news, a lot is being talked about mental health and trauma and healing. All those words are, let's say, they are in today. But the interesting thing is, what do those words really mean? And when I say that, it is from a different set of perspectives. First of all, what does that mean when in the radio we hear that? Where does that come from? Where do the reporters are taking that expression? Trauma, traumatic experiences. Where are they taking this from? What does that mean? Also, what does that mean for us? Each one of us here, if I ask you what a trauma is, you're going to probably tell me something different. But that is a little bit of an intersection. And we're going to try to find that intersection quickly as well. Also, like always, we are here not only to understand the experiences that we go through in life from the point of view of humans that are here for 50, 60, 70, 80 years, but we are also attempting to understand how we can see those experiences from the point of view of the immortal being. Because here we are looking at ourselves, we are looking at each other as beings that are more than simply human beings incarnated on this earth, that live this specific limited life. We're going to try to look at those experiences from the point of view of the spirit. So let's try to unlock that listening that we have, that is that listening from within our, what we call here, our immortal beings. That hearing that is for today and beyond. Does that make sense? Thank you. So, disclaimers. Again, 21st century is the century of disclaimers. So, disclaimer, this is not psychological advice, okay? Even though I work with this, I'm not here to treat anybody. I'm not here to interpret anybody's experiences in a very particular way. I'm not here to talk about therapies of any kind. I'm here as someone just like you, trying to learn, trying to have those lessons sink in for me, not only as somebody that works mental health, but also somebody just like you that is learning about the spiritual life, learning how to be better with myself, with you, in life in general. So I'm not here as a specialist. Can we? Thank you. Let's look at what the world today understands about trauma. So if you think about trauma, there are many ways that we can look at it. Not only from the psychological perspective, but if you think about trauma, is anything that impacts something, that causes some sort of change. Usually when we talk about trauma, is a detrimental change, right? So if somebody takes a baseball bat and hits my leg, chances are it's going to break it. And therefore, my leg was traumatized because it suffered some sort of impact, some sort of injury that is leading to the need for some sort of fixing or some sort of healing. But also when we talk about trauma, and I think that is the most important thing today, talking about what we call psychological trauma. Is there such a thing? Yes, there is such a thing. Everybody goes through experiences in life. Positive, negative, neutral. Some of those experiences lead us to grow. Some experiences lead us to suffer. What happens is many of those experiences are incredibly painful. They hurt physically and emotionally. When an experience hits us emotionally, we usually respond to it. That is always a response from us. That response is what we call trauma. A trauma is an emotional response, a very intense or a very impactful emotional responses from experiences that are in nature distressing, negative, painful, difficult, challenging. That's what psychological trauma is the way that we respond to challenging experiences that we go through. And the most interesting thing about those experiences is that we are learning today in the psychological field, in the field of psychotherapy, also in medicine in many ways, is that we experience the trauma not only when we experience something that happens with us firsthand. Also, trauma is a response of something that we witness. Let's say, I may be in a car accident. When I was young, I was in a car accident. Some who know me know that I have a little mark here, this beautiful mark in my face. I actually was. My body was traumatized from a, a car accident. Also, psychologically, I was impacted by it because I was in what people call, I was in shock. So there was a lot of, negative experiences that I went through. There was a lot of need for me to, fix my body and also heal, my emotions and my mind because of that experience. For a long time, I was remembering what was happening, right? It's almost like a kind of there is a shock, and then there are shock waves that come after. Some memories, some flashbacks, some other experiences that we go through that are the result of those very important, intense, impactful experiences. But imagine if somebody was in the sidewalk and watching something like this to happen. This person, in their own way, also may be traumatized because it may be incredibly shocking looking at something so impactful, something potentially hurtful to others. Sometimes we can put ourselves in, the shoes of the person that is going through that. Sometimes simply the fact that we see something tragic, very difficult, very negative, very painful happening causes us to have also a very intense emotional response. For instance, there are people that watch something and then they have nightmares about it. They cannot sleep because the scene of that negative experience keeps coming back and keeps, like a movie that is in loop. Also, and that is the most interesting thing, we are learning as well. And here we are still looking at us, humans, living that life 50, 60, 70, 80 years. We're still here, humans, mortal. If we learn about it, if sometimes we hear news today is a great source of trauma for many people. That's why we talk about disclaimers. There are so many disclaimers those days. Please make sure that you are aware that this news right now may be distressing for some people. So please be careful. Be advised that this might not be easy for you to hear, to read, to watch. With so many things happening today, wars, conflicts, very easy for us to be disturbed emotionally by that. A lot of emotional disturbances. Many of us are experiencing a lot of that, either because of first-hand experiences, witnessing some of those very impactful experiences, or even learning about it. Now we have a brief understanding. From now on, when we talk about trauma, let's look at psychological trauma. Let's understand that we may be going through, witnessing, listening about it, somebody that we know, or simply something that impacts us because somehow we feel that this is hard to go through. Then we need to the causes, right? Fancy word to talk about the causes. What cause that is contributing factors. So we need to write beautifully. First of all, there is something that it is we caused, right? My personality, the way that I am, I may be a more sensitive person. I may have had experiences in my life that make me be a little more sensitive to certain experiences. Maybe I actually am very resistant, emotionally to some experiences. I don't get affected easily. That depends a lot. The way, what we call coping style. Coping style is the way that we deal with it. Some people have, a very strong sense of, like dealing with emotional things, have what we call some emotional, strength to endure certain experiences in a very positive way. Some don't. There is biology as well. Some of us have biologically a susceptibility, a tendency to be more impacted by certain experiences. Therefore, experience more of the negative effect of those experiences. Again, if you don't understand something, it is not only a lecture. You can always raise your hand. You can always ask for clarification. Sometimes those things are not very easy. I'm trying to make as easy as possible for me, for everybody. Okay, I don't want to be here in a kind of a technical lecture of any sort. Those words are what they are, and we need to kind of break them down to understand what they mean. Also, we need to look at trauma or those impactful experiences from the point of view of relationships. Because the way that we were raised matters a lot on how we deal with impactful experiences. Let's say, how can you can tell me, Thiago, beautiful. What can you give me an example? Of course, I can give you an example. Imagine that we are raised in a family where people are extremely, extremely responsive to things, very loud, very intense. Like my family has some Italian blood, and everything that happens, the people are just like very loud, and they are very like catastrophic on everything. 5 minutes after, they almost forgot what happened. But maybe as a child, I pick up those ways for people to deal with it. So here I am in Canada, arriving, and then something happens, and I am getting up off my chair, and I am saying things loud. Oh my gosh, what's going on? And then people look at me and what is this? This person is, disturbed in certain way, because people react in different ways. We learn how to react to experiences. We learn how to react to events. Maybe in my family, we had experiences in the past that were very negative, very impactful. So many people in my family may be incredibly anxious and worried about things always to happen. I may then grow up thinking that being worried about things is normal. That's the way to be. So here I am. Anything that I do, I'm going to drive. Oh my gosh, it's snowing. Something is going to happen. Oh, it is cold. I need to put my coat on because I'm going to get sick. So I'm constantly in this kind of hypervigilance. This is part of the ways that we are raised, that we learn how to deal with experiences. And now we are learning something even more impactful. For people who are, studying that, who are learning, if we're here in Canada, we are listening, and experiencing a lot of the conversations on what happened with indigenous populations here in Canada. We're not going to the merit of it. We're going to talk about, some of the facts that happened. Very sad, very tragic. And we are hearing more and more something called generational trauma. What does that mean, Thiago? Many people are talking about generational trauma. Is that a thing? Folks, it is a thing. It means, and it has its roots even in biology and in genetics. What happens is something that may have happened that is very difficult, very painful, very impactful and challenging 2 or 3 generations back. My grandparents, my great-grandparents. And the way that the people around learned how to deal with those very impactful experiences are somehow passed from generation to generation. From genetics, there were very many studies already that happened that even animals that had learned how to be averse to certain foods or to certain smells or to certain specific stimulations passed that kind of aversion, that fear to others in the future generations, even if they never experienced that. They would have the same painful, fearful, and intense reactions. We know now, even more because of the experiences that people that are going through the difficulties and a lot of struggles today, the generations today, especially when you look at indigenous peoples that are suffering so much difficulties with basic, conditions of living, that are trying to deal with their painful emotions in such a difficult way as well. We're talking about, instead of looking for certain ways of healing, they are trying sometimes to deal with that using external source, like over medicating, self-medicating, trying to deal with it. But they didn't go through the same things that their grandparents went through. But they are still receiving the impact of the traumatic events that happened 2 or 3 generations ago. Therefore, sometimes we may wonder, I have certain phobias or certain fears or certain, difficulties and challenges today. I don't know where they come from. From the sciences today, we already know that maybe there are experiences that generations past us already had that. And in many different ways, we adopted that same way to deal with the challenges. Again, I'm not going into any depth here, okay? I invite you to look for more information. It's not a technical lesson, but it is important for us to understand it. And when we start looking at generational trauma, that is for us the segue to start think. Wait a second, remember that we just mentioned in the beginning. If we can look at those experiences from generations, what about if we look at those experiences from past experiences of us as immortal spirits in constant process of evolution, going through many different experiences incarnated? Would that also apply? That's my question, and I can see already. Yes, that also would apply. And that is our segue to understand that what the world is bringing us today in terms of knowledge about those experiences also can be seen from the perspective of the immortal spirit. Okay, can we go there then? Of course we can. Of course we can. If we look at those experiences for beyond the psychological experiences, but also from the moral and the spiritual realms, we look at least 3 main sources of trauma. First, current life experiences. I went through traumatic experiences, and it is leading me to have lots of different responses and react to this and have lots of different ways to deal with it and needs, right? The other thing is, what do I need now to heal from the pain that comes from those experiences? Second, now we are looking at past life experiences. In Spiritism, we understand, and the Spirit's book is very clear. If something doesn't have a cause in the present life, surely it will have its cause in a previous existence. If something is happening with us and we don't understand the causes today, chances are the causes are in past experiences. And we also know that as spirits, we carry with us the result of all the experiences that we go through. We are in a constant process of evolution. And one experience in life to the other, we don't have those leaps or those jumps of evolution. More or less, we pick up where we left. We have the opportunity in the spiritual life to look at our existence, to evaluate the quality of the experiences that we went through, to also, with the help of our spiritual guides, our spiritual mentors, our spiritual friends, to plan in general the types of experiences that we are going through in the following existence that are going to teach us and help us to grow. And also how we are going to continue reaping the impact or the effect of the actions that we had in previous existence. What is interesting here, and that is something that I started paying attention, if we look at generational trauma and we look at what the Spiritist literature tells us, even if we think that there's a passage in the Bible that there was a man with lots of issues, a man that was blind, a man that had lots of physical problems, and Jesus was there and healed this man. His parents come and ask Jesus. So, look at the wisdom that people have back then. Right? Why did he have that? Why was he blind? Was it because of him? Was it because of what happened before? Like the way that they say, and it's like, was it because of his parents or his grandparents? Something that happened in the past, which means they had that idea of multiple existences. But then, of course, that Jesus said, this person specifically was part of the program, and he came that way to help me to show that healing is something possible. But that questioning means that there was already knowledge that we carry the results of the experiences that we go through in previous existences. And many times we will need 1, 2, 3, or more incarnations in order to fully make sense, make meaning, and even heal from the impact of other experiences that we go through. So every time that we read a passage of a book, every time that we read a chapter of a book psychographed by Chico Xavier from a spirit, let's try to use the eyes of the immortal spirit. When we listen to this sort of knowledge, let's listen with the ears of the immortal spirit. Why? Because chances are that this message that we read today, let's have a cordial conversation with the people that we disagree with. This is the work of the centuries. That's what I always say. Sometimes there are tasks that we are enrolled to perform that are not meant to be done in one sitting. That means there are many challenges that in order for us to go through, to make meaning of them, and to be able to reap the results of the lessons, and then be able to apply them, it may take a while. And that's okay. Many of us are going through experiences, and as much as we see progress, there is a tendency in this world today that everything needs to happen so fast. We need to have one sitting and then we resolve a conflict. We need to have one injection and we fix a disease, right? So many people, and here's the doctor to prove that, so many people receive a prescription. You need to have that for 2 full weeks. And on the 3 days after the person takes the pill, I feel much better, and then stops taking. And then suddenly they need to go back, and instead of 2 weeks, it's a month. Or 2 months, or actually you need to do many other things, because so many times we are immediatists. We want to see fast results. But we are not speaking here about one sitting, one conversation, one opportunity to grow. We are talking about the sustainable growth from the perspective of the mortal spirit. which means experiences that we went through in previous lives, in previous incarnations, will have an impact in the following experiences that we go through in following incarnations. When we think about generational trauma, isn't it possible? And let's think about it. If Spiritism teaches us that many times we are born and reborn within the same circle of relationships, because that's how we grow together, may I have then today the opportunity to heal from experiences that I went through 2 or 3 generations back myself? That I may have the divine opportunity to come back to this incarnation and to learn not only how to heal from those experiences, but make sure that this is not being repeated. To also grow in resisting and learning how to be stronger, and also help others that right now are also being impacted by this generational trauma, how also to heal together. So we can start amplifying our perspective. Healing doesn't happen in one sitting. Healing is, for most of us, a centuries journey of spiritual growth. A centuries journey. If we look then, going forward, and trying to take the lessons very specifically from Spiritism, as we are talking about the immortal spirit, we know that the Spiritism came to us to help us to understand about the spiritual world, the nature of us as immortal spirits, where we come from, where is our destination, and the relationship of the spiritual world with the material world. So when we look at the spiritual perspective of trauma, but we are here as spirits incarnated, what do we need to do then? Being here incarnated, how can we then look at trauma, and more than that, how we can start thinking about overcoming, healing, dealing with those experiences, be stronger to go through the difficulties and the challenges in life, and somehow, even though being impacted, not suffering so much that I will in a way paralyze my life. Many people today, if we look at what we call today PTSD, right? If we talk about trauma, also it is all around certain terms like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. How many people suffer through that? So many people suffer through that. Remember when you talk about witnessing? Imagine a person, a first responder. Imagine a firefighter. Imagine a paramedic. Imagine a police officer. Imagine somebody that witnesses those things, that their job is going after the traumatic events. Aren't they traumatized? Yes. So through supporting actually them, there was a lot of knowledge that came to help all of us to understand how to overcome traumatic experience. Not only about them, but also about how many people today are suffering because of the limitations and the difficulties and the challenges that life itself posed to us. The world today is very clear. Life is becoming harder. More difficulty to simply have a job that is going to put food in our tables. All the preoccupations that many of us have. All the uncertainties that we may go outside and may be a target of wrongdoing by anybody. Sadly, some of the same people that are suffering PTSD are also causing PTSD in others. Right? The ones who have pain, if not dealt with, are going to cause pain, are going to reproduce that pain as well. So pain brings more pain. But we know as well that here we are to try to experience healing. Because healing will then multiply healing. Healing will model healing as well. Because at the end of the day, it's not done alone. Healing doesn't happen only with one person. Because when one experiences pain, we already know generations may experience pain. Can we think then that when we experience healing, we can then influence all the environment around us to also experience healing? Yes, that is the good news. So let's think about it. Let's think about it. There, in the Spirit's book, question 919, Allan Kardec asked the spirits about how can we get to know ourselves better in order to identify our imperfections and in order to make changes to perfect ourselves. And who answers that question is actually the spirit of him who was here incarnated, Saint Augustine. And he says, there is a method for us to understand that. Do an inventory of yourself. Every day, after the day that you had, you stop, look back, and reflect about your day. What have I done? What was the impact of what I have done in others? What happened around me? What was the impact of those experiences on me? Do I think that I could have done something different? Do I think that some of the actions, if tomorrow they are to happen again, would I do different? And he says this is an exercise of self-awareness. Because in that chapter in the Spirit's book, it is a conversation about one of the main slogans in the ancient Greece: know yourself. We are here in order to know ourselves better. Understanding that we are more than only a person that lives 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Understanding that we are a spirit. Understanding that our nature is spiritual, but we are also incarnated, going through those experiences. Understanding that trauma and healing happens in many different existences is self-awareness. I am getting to know myself because I am getting to know that those experiences have a purpose, have a meaning, where they come from, and how I can heal from them. So the first thing is that self-awareness. Knowing what impacts me more or less. How can I also impact others, the environment where I live? And then how can I do better? How can I self-improve? That is one important way. How can I self-improve? And then you're asking me, Thiago, but what about self-improve? You're talking about trauma. Are we talking about healing? Yes, we're going to get there. But also self-improvement means also, are there ways for me to deal in a healthier, safer way about those experiences that I go through? Why do I suffer so much? Is there a way for me to suffer less? Yes. Is there a way for the world to learn how to treat each other better? Yes. That is an individual way, and that is a collective way. That is a social way. Allan Kardec was actually an educator. His name, his human name, Hippolyte. He was a teacher. He was a researcher. He was a disciple of one of the most important visionaries of education that ever existed, called Johann Pestalozzi. That together with other educators still are not understood by us. So visionary that they were. Allan Kardec was a teacher, a professor. He still has articles that are used in mathematics. for early education in Europe. As an educator, he was able to look at those experiences to talk about what he called moral education. What is moral, Tiago? Good question. Thank you for asking. Moral means the conduct. Moral is the conduct. When we talk about something moral, we're talking about the quality of our conduct. Which quality? That's what we call ethics. An ethical mind generates a better moral conduct. Which means when we start understanding the spiritist ethics, we are incarnated spirits in process of evolution. We're still imperfect. We're still going to hurt. We're still going to be hurt. We need to learn how to heal and how to help the world to heal with us. We need to perfect ourselves through acting better with each other. Moral. Improving our conduct. So every time that you watch a lecture, they say we need to improve our morals. What does that mean? We need to improve our conduct. How we treat ourselves. How we treat others. That's what it means. This all to promote what we are calling today spiritual growth. In Portuguese, there is a terminology that we use a lot. In Portuguese, and I will say that word in Portuguese, but sorry for those who speak English, I will go translate for you. It's called reforma íntima. So I can see some not. It is the inner, what here we call inner transformation. Very common that we hear this term. Self-awareness, self-improvement, and spiritual growth. Improvement of our conduct. That is the inner transformation. Broken down to make sense today. That's what it is. Oh, so it means that the inner transformation is going to help me to overcome and to deal with traumatic experiences. Yes, it is one of the ways. Not the only, but one of the ways. From the spiritist perspective, let's look at what trauma is then. A temporary loss of harmony between spirit, perispirit, and the body. Remember, we are here as spirits incarnated. What happens with us when we suffer a traumatic experience or when we witness a traumatic event, what happens is our spirits may be locked in that experience. That happens very often. Those who have some more experience and read about what happens with the spirit when they suffer too much. For instance, when a spirit discarnates in a very tragic accident, abruptly, and sometimes they have even difficulty having the awareness that they already discarnated and they are in the spiritual world. That's trauma. Trauma happens in the other side of life as well. So there is a time and a period of confusion that is very difficult for the spirit to regain self-awareness. Who am I? What happened with me? I don't remember. What happened that I was in a place and now I am in another? What happens with us here as traumatic experiences are not affecting only our bodies, are not only affecting our brains. Let's remember, the brains, they are a reflection of our spiritual self. So sometimes there are disturbances even, and emotional disturbances that happen with us because of traumatic events that are affecting us not only from the perspective of our human psychology, but our spirit has been wounded. And sometimes the spirit is also going through a process of trying to make sense of those experiences. I'm just going to give you an interesting fact here. That is something that many people that go through very specific traumatic events experience. which is called the tendency to repeat the trauma. The tendency to experience over and over again, or even expose yourself to similar events in life. Even though you know that was so bad before. But it's not about that we want to go through those experiences. These experiences are so impactful that it feels like a loop. This experience is so impactful that sometimes we develop something like a tunnel vision, and it is difficult for us to see life in a different way. That's why people that went through traumatic events go through so much trouble, ups and downs. If we go through traumatic events, when we experience the nightmares, when we experience those flashbacks, when sometimes we almost feel like transported to the event itself, when we are transported to the past and we feel what we feel almost as if we are experiencing everything again with the sense of reality, as if it is constantly experiencing. Our spirit has a healing mechanism in the same way that our bodies will have, that our spirit is claiming for resolution, claiming for healing. It is a defense mechanism. If something is being repeated in our minds constantly, chances are it is asking for this issue to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be dealt with. As much as we want to get rid of problems, sometimes those problems are coming back. But instead of looking from the perspective, oh my gosh, those problems never leave me, from the point of view of the immortal spirit, we have important opportunities. We are coming back because it is an unfinished business that is asking to be finished, so then we can continue progressing. Easy? No, nobody said that. Oh, amazing. Look at this problem that I want to get rid of. It's coming back every day to me. No, that's not like that. But we need to look at those experiences and say, maybe this is claiming for resolution in a way that I still don't understand. So why not then ask for help to deal with those experiences in a way that is healthier? And finally, I can put back that experience where it belongs, in the past. And then I can move forward, taking the experiences. Even if the experiences is, oh my gosh, I should never do that again. Even if it is that, to be cautious, to make sure that I understand about life in a way that is different than I understood back then, and to grow from those experiences. Again, Spiritism will tell us that the painful experiences that we go through are not punitive. We are already in the time in the life that we understand that there is no punishment. Who punishes us more than anybody else is our conscience. More than anyone and anything else, our conscience punishes us. When we have the feeling that we are not aligned with something, with some kind of compass, which most of the time is what we call, many of us call it, moral compass. Oh, again, moral. The conduct aligned with values, with purpose, with meaning. We cannot forget also that there are spiritual influences. When we are not aligned with life, that imbalance will also help us to connect in our frequency of thinking and feeling with the same patterns. So if I am in pain, chances are I will see pain. I will identify pain, and I will be reminded of pain. I will be aligning myself with pain. If there are spirits that are also aligned with pain, I will be connected with. It is going to be reinforced. So that process of healing involves looking at the pain from a different perspective, if I continue practicing looking at pain from the healing and educational perspective, I will start realigning with a perspective that most of the things that are happening with me are to teach me something. Pain can have a very simple lesson for us: how not to feel. Remember, I'm not talking about how not to feel, about the work of the centuries. If I am constantly suffering from different experiences, it is important for me to learn there are different paths that I can take. Sometimes I'm involved voluntarily in activities or relationships also that are painful. It is important for me to realize, to take knowledge about myself, that there are different ways that I can look for fulfillment, in different ways to live, different ways to experience life, different relationships, different habits that are going to be more healthy, less painful. Then we have those levels of healing, right? We look at the cognitive level that we're talking about from the psychological perspective. And we're talking about that moral renewal, renewing our conduct in order to live a life that promotes more health, more healing. And even in the face of difficult experiences, I can then experience them in a way that are healthier, less impactful. That is the need for us never forgetting to connect with the spirituality. If we are talking about being spiritual beings, we're talking about the connection with the spirituality in a way that is going to allow us to be invested in thinking about healing, receiving intuition and advices from our spiritual benefactors, our spiritual friends, those from the spiritual life that continue accompanying us during this existence, that never abandon us because they are here out of love for us and want to help, to support, to encourage us through messages, thoughts, dreams, the visit of somebody, a reading that comes to us, coming for a lecture, or simply in insights that we have that gives us different perspectives of living. And social and spiritual connection. That is many times a misunderstood concept, but it is important, and the spirituality is very clear for us. How can we perfect a habit? Everybody knows here. We go to school, we go to apprenticeship, right? We have mentors, we practice, we study more, we learn new techniques of things, and then suddenly we start becoming good at something. If we want to align ourselves with healing, with health, with positive perspectives, why not practicing that as well? There is nothing mystical about it. That's why in Spiritism, since forever, there are many sources in Spiritism that say, you want to heal from your pain? Go love others. But again, there is nothing mystical about it. Let's think about that even from the perspective of developing habits. If I develop a habit of helping, I will do this with myself. I will do this with others. I will do this with life. By helping, I perfect the art of helping. By healing, I perfect the art of healing. By practicing looking at life from a better perspective, I will start seeing the experiences that are happening with me from a different perspective as well. As painful as they are, we start extracting the meaning and the lessons and make changes to live better. And then we are talking here about 3 pathways, right? I need to go, we're almost done. This is supposed to be an entire weekend of lessons, I will tell you. We could have a seminar on that with many people coming here and talking. It would be wonderful. So I really, really invite you to look into it, because I think all of us will benefit from that. So we can look at 3 pathways. So then we talked about the psychological. That's how we started, right? So we look at therapy. Please don't forget that. The world can offer many good things, okay? Psychotherapy, self-awareness, reconnection with, healthy habits and positive things that we go through in life. From the spiritist point of view, we look at the moral reform. Remember, the improvement of our conduct. We look at forgiveness. But please, that's why forgiveness will be a lecture in itself. But let's just look very quickly at the idea of forgiveness, okay? It doesn't mean that if somebody causes you pain, you need to go and hug them and forgive them. That's not what it's being talked about. There was one lecturer in Brazil that gave a very interesting perspective of what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is #bye. It is liberating myself from the source of the pain. Not perpetuating a negative relationship. That's what forgiveness is. It's not go back and trying to, allow a person that hurt me to be with me. No, that's not what love is. This is masochism. Forgiveness means, let's make sure that I don't repeat what happened with me. I don't give it back in the same measure what was given to me. And I make sure that I continue moving forward with my life. That pain, who caused me, was not me. I'm not here causing pain. I received that. But I will move forward. I'm out. It's like #I'm out. Let's move ourselves away from the sources of pain. And also learn that that's not the way. If somebody hurt me, am I going to repeat? Revenge is what it is, right? Revenge is, I'm going to do exactly what was done to me. In hopes that the pain is going to be transferred back. No. Now instead of one person, hurting is 2. At most. So forgiveness is the matter of how we can then learn and work towards liberating myself, moving past that. Okay. Charity, we spoke about, service to others, prayer, connecting with the sources of healing and health that comes from the spiritual world, the sources of love and life, God, Jesus, the good spirits that are surrounding us and all the time helping us to move to a better path. And then we can look very specifically at Jesus' teachings. Obviously, Jesus is the model. I also heard one day somebody telling me, Jesus didn't want Christians. Jesus wanted Christs. I found this powerful. But I try to break it down. Again, I never take those words light. I break them down. Jesus said, you are gods. Jesus said, everything that I'm doing, you can do. Jesus healed. Can we put in practice the ability that we have that is latent, that is dormant, to heal ourselves and others? Yes. Can I endure pain in a way that promotes growth? Yes. Can I practice that belief that those experiences are lessons for me to go forward? Yes, I can. Jesus gave us innumerable lessons in that regard. Again, very quickly from the perspective of psychology, we're looking at acceptance of those experiences, right? Not running away. The ability to process those painful emotions, build safer relationships, find meaning and purpose in those experiences. In a nutshell. From the Spiritist teachings, right? The moral realignment, self-knowledge, forgiveness and compassion, faith and spiritual practice, service and community involvement. we're looking at very powerful, important habits for us to develop, right? Look, if we look at practicing acceptance, right? Practicing building safer relationships. This is powerful because it means improving our lives in many different dimensions. Same thing. And then we look at so many examples that we can extract from Jesus' lessons. From the ability to cry. How many of us, especially if we look at, men, guys, we are taught not to cry. We're taught to neglect emotional experiences. Trauma also comes from the repression of emotional experiences. But it is very interesting. Jesus, a perfect being, as perfect as a being can be, facing the pain of those whom he loved, cried. Do you think that Jesus was crying only about himself and his own pain? Jesus was teaching us to cry. We all know when we cry, the next day what happens? There is some weird lightness that we feel. As painful as it is, almost a sort of a cleanse. We feel that we can breathe a little more after that catharsis, that emotional experience. Trauma leads to that is emotional experience. Crying is one of the healthiest ways that one can process and externalize emotional experiences. Right? When we think about, he has sent me to heal the brokenhearted. That's when, Luke is paraphrasing Jesus, probably. He never said probably that, but said something like that has a similar meaning, right? We're talking about that idea of the integrated, holistic meaning, right? Like we need to heal the body, we need to heal the mind, we need to heal the soul. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. What is the truth? Life is painful many times. What is the other truth? We are still imperfect. We hurt and are prone to be hurt. What is the other truth? I need to know myself, to improve myself. The truth will set you free. Remember? Hashtag, I'm gone. Hashtag, I'm free. Forgiving. Moving forward. The truth will help us to move forward in a healthier way. For instance, by healing traumas. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, or tired, or traumatized, and I will give you rest. Jesus didn't tell us that he was going to heal us, but he told us that he was going to give us rest. He never told us that he was going to carry our cross, but he told us, I will share the burden with you, because when he says, because my teaching is light, my burden is light, that my yoke is light. We need to remember that he was looking and he was talking to farmers. He was talking to people in the rural areas, and they understood that piece of wood that is on top of two different cows, to share the load, so two instead of one are carrying their load. That's why he said, I'm here to share the load with you. Not to take away your pain, but help you how to go through the healing process. I am with you to the end of times. Psychological, spiritist, and finally, looking at Jesus as our model, as our best example of conduct that one can have. That was the question. 625 on the Spirit's book. What is the type that is the most perfect for us model of conduct. He already said, he's not here to heal our pain, but he's here to remind us, and all those lessons and all this knowledge and all the wisdom that we are developing, it is because we are awakening our own ability to heal, our self-healing abilities, because we are divine. And as divine beings coming from God, going towards God, we have the seeds of healing with us, putting in practice, improving our conduct, changing the ways that we see life and pain, understanding that traumatic experiences are part of the experiences that we have today, that are lessons for us for growth, for healing, and for perfecting ourselves in the future. It is through our faith, through our conduct, through our change of perspective in life, that we're going to be able to progressively overcome our traumatic experiences, helping the world to heal. The world needs a lot of healing today. This is a lesson for all of us to do together, so we can finally heal together, improve our world together, and, as Jesus said, be perfect. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, Q&A. Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I think I fully understand what you're saying. I just wanted to just confirm. For example, when you use the example of when the man was born blind, and you gave the different examples of, okay, was it the grandparents? Was it him? Or was it us? And Jesus gave the example that in this case, no, it was he was born for this to happen for a purpose, for a higher purpose,
Right.
For me to be shown.
Right.
So in life, it could be various reasons. It could be our past incarnations, our generational, incarnations from our family. But it also could be the agreement that we made before we even came to this earth to live this out for a higher purpose. But in all purposes, it's God's plan for us to grow and evolve and to make not just an impact in our own life, but to impact others.
Oh, absolutely. You are right. And it is important for us to understand that when we look at the experiences that we go through, all of us, it will be easy for us, and because of our limitations, we look sometimes at those experiences, first of all, only about ourselves. It's very common. We are still in that, we're trying to get out of that phase of egocentrism, right? Like everything is about us. So we are expanding that. We are always in connection. We are always in relationship. We learned already that we grow in groups, in communities of spirits. That's why we are built in society, in families, in neighborhoods, in cities, in nations, in specific communities of different people, what we call races today. But even though that, humans are not divided, but we are gregarious for a very specific reason. We are all growing together. It is in relationship that we grow. So imagine that certain specific, very specific experiences that people go through, right? Like imagine somebody that is born in a family and lives for 3, 4, 5 years on, and says goodbye and said, I need to go back, and goes back. Maybe there is a reason, maybe no, there is a reason for this person to be here only for 5 years. And that is also an important experience for people who are around, who accepted somehow bringing that person to this life for 5 years to allow them to go through the experience. But also, there is some lessons. Maybe we still don't know them. And usually we don't know them. We're going to remember them when we go back. Oh, that's the reason, right? Sometimes it's just because some people are altruistic enough to say, This person has only 5 years. We know that we're going to suffer because when we are incarnated, we create bonds that are very strong with people, right? But I will need to learn how to allow this person to continue flying solo. Because at the end of the day, our nature is spiritual. And a lot through the pain, through the loss, we start awakening to spiritualist, to a more spiritualist view of life. Sometimes those experiences, as painful as they are, they may be there to awaken us or to awaken others. We don't know. And usually I say, let's be safe. If I have a painful experience, let's make sure that I'm learning it first. Because I don't want to come to the danger that I'm going to say, oh, I'm here for a purpose. So then I am so enlightened that I'm doing something. But at the end of the day, what is lacking me sometimes, it is the humbleness to understand that I am imperfect, that I am going through. But the point is, it is for all of us. When Jesus says that, a spirit came to help him to show that healing is possible, it doesn't mean that person was also, didn't benefit from that. Of course, that spirit that partially was blind for part of his existence and then was, healed by Jesus, also, there was a purpose for that, even to strengthen his belief and his faith that actually this is possible, right? To accept that. Most of Jesus' disciples, in fact, were very imperfect. And part of their lessons was really strengthen their belief system, strengthen what we call the faith, that rational faith that Spiritism gives us. Sometimes that's what it is. But sometimes it is even to understand that we come with limitations because those limitations are barriers, but are not complete deterrents. How many people with so many limitations are incredibly successful and skillful and are able to overcome for themselves and for others as well. So let's call it multi-layered levels that are happening at the same time. Maybe I will be able to take advantage today of one of those levels, but they are all there. Does that make sense? All right, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yes.
you mentioned about forgiveness that could be an entire lecture.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, there was last week.
Oh, great.
Anybody can go in the YouTube channel. And there is-
Facebook, YouTube, yeah.
Yes, last week was about forgiveness.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Thiago, and thank everyone who joined us online. We're going to close our broadcast now and prepare for the passes.